They keep on saying he worked for Pinochet. I did not. I never met Pinochet. I never spoke to Pinochet.
But you did meet him?
I did meet him. I met him 10 years earlier in Santiago. Curfew had just started and I walked down the square. And there was Nazi type-looking soldiers standing outside. And I walked up holding a letter in my hand and I said, I'd like to see General Pinochet. And I said, I've brought a letter from Mrs. Thatcher. And he waved me through, and I went to this library where the man in uniform standing in the corner was General Pinochet. So I said hello to him, and I had this letter in Margaret's handwriting. It basically said, please would you assist Mr. Bell in any way you can. So he's a personal emissary of mine, please help him. And I just happened to take advantage of that situation. I knew how people felt about Pinochet. I mean, he was supposed to have done some terrible things. I'm sure he did most of them.
What's the historical context? I remember I was having lunch with Allende the day before he was killed. September 10th. The coup was that September 11th. On the day of the coup, the 2 days later, I remember that myself, when I was called in what was called the bando, a list of names of people that we call these guys to come to the military and to present themselves, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, you could be lost your life. So I went myself voluntarily. Well, I ended up in prison. But the day we went, I remember there were, in the Rio Mapocho that crosses the city, cadavers of people dead there. And so they were killing from the very beginning, and they kept killing until the end.
I mean, the great missing people and all those people, they were nothing to do with me. I never had anything to do with them. And I never acquired the loathing of Pinochet that people had. I just liked him.
Deprived of even the most basic expression of democratic rights for the last 15 years, they gathered in Santiago today in their tens of thousands. It was the culmination of the presidential referendum campaign, a vote that would allow the people to elect their own president next year.
Pinochet estaba constitucional, estaba obligado a hacer un plebiscito el año 1988. Él pensaba que ese plebiscito era un trámite. Nunca esperó que pudiera ganar el no. Pero en ese referéndum ganó el no.
Once that took place, well, it was very hard for the right to defend a candidacy. The candidate for the traditional right that was behind Pinochet was Büchi.
And I met a man called Büchi, Büchi, B-U-C-H-I. And he said he was going to run for president. He was going to be the Pinochet candidate.
La derecha chilena ha admirado a Margaret Thatcher. Ha sido un ejemplo. Por lo tanto, me imagino que traer personas que hayan participado con ella era natural.
He was a strange guy, a complete non-candidate. He was a vegetarian in a country which is dominated by beef. He rode a bicycle in a country which is 90% cars. And he was very tall, and the Chileans are all 3'6". he had no idea about what he had to do.
Por tanto, había que buscar transmitir los conceptos de Margaret Thatcher. Y Büchi no era Margaret Thatcher.
Büchi no era un actor político, era un actor más técnico.
You wanted to have freedom. People wanted to exist as citizens. And you put a guy that was helping a dictatorship saying that he will manage the rate of exchange in a better way. It was a little bit ridiculous. It was not the mood of the country. So, and he didn't want either.
Scenes erupted at Büchi's rally as rival supporters clashed in the streets of Santiago.
Entonces, de alguna forma, creo que Bell tenía que buscar mantener la frescura de Büchi.
I met him in a hotel bar, and it was getting on for 7 o'clock, and the sun was going down, and the evening was coming up. And there's a very strange light in Chile at that time of the day. And I looked at him, and I suddenly thought, he looks exactly like somebody I know. And I lost concentration in the conversation, and I suddenly said, Clint Eastwood. And he said, sorry, what do you mean? And I said, well, you look exactly like Clint Eastwood. And he did look, he looked exactly like Clint Eastwood. So, he said, well, what do we do about that? And I said, we have to take a picture of you. Went out on a hillside and fired a wind machine at him. And they took a picture of him standing with a poncho on. And then he stood there, and we wrote, Büchi es el hombre, underneath it, which means Büchi's the man. And we showed it to the Pinochet people, who said, what's this? Yeah, but he looks exactly like Clint Eastwood in From a Fistful of Dollars. And they said, who's Clint Eastwood? According to the polls, we went from 48% to 58%, and then went back in when they held the first public meeting, and he spoke to the people. He went straight back to 48 because he just was a lousy communicator. It was very disappointing that we lost, but we got paid a hell of a lot of money.
Most probably he was well paid. You have those guys everywhere. But in Spanish we will say despreciable.
Esa campaña, lamentablemente, la derecha chilena le costó mucho aprender. Hoy todos sabemos que ser empático es mucho más importante que ser inteligente.
Parte de mi carácter, parte de mi estilo político se forja en ese tiempo. En la última elección, yo lo que señalé es que de los que estábamos ahí, el único que realmente mantenía una línea, el que era de derecha y lo decía, era yo. Por lo tanto, en la ficción de que Augusto Pinochet no hubiese muerto, no habría tenido otra alternativa que votar por mí. A aquellas personas que piensan que Chile retrocedería son claramente personas de izquierda que no ven la diferencia entre el blanco y el negro, que no saben lo que es el fascismo, que yo sí lo sé. ¿Y qué es lo que he aprendido? Que hay que transmitir las cosas con la verdad, con la convicción, sin miedo.
It's an illusion. It's an illusion, and so much of power is an illusion. And so much of influence is a delusion.